Hello everyone, Brian from the channel Brian here, and it's time for me to talk about The Vast of Night. Vast of Night is the directorial debut for Andrew Patterson, and considering the thinned crop of movies to watch this summer, I get the feeling it would have been very easily lost in the shuffle had COVID not been a factor. But since it has, this film has actually built up a slight cult following, and it's not difficult to see why. The Vast of Night proudly wears its obvious influences, namely the Twilight Zone and very early Spielberg. The film even opens with a stylistically duplicative version of the Twilight Zone intro, essentially beating the audience over the head with what it's referencing and what the tone of the film is going to resemble. But The Vast of Night is so immediately faithful to that tone anyway, the audience would have picked up on it in the first minute or two. And this overcommitment to what is very honestly a corny and simplistic tone is my biggest problem with the film. Patterson calls back to this framing device periodically throughout the movie to little or no effect besides further reminding you what his influences are. I feel many of the film's shortcomings, whether it's the unremarkable cinematography or the excruciatingly thin characters, fans will try to justify as part of the homage. And there are a lot of people with nostalgia for this type of filmmaking, to the point where all they need to be satisfied is feeling at home in that style. But personally, I think the film has its shortcomings even under the lens that Vast of Night is an unabashed, warts and all type of genre film. There's nothing about Vast of Night's inspirations that means it can't be well shot. Throwback movies run into this common problem of having camera quality that is way too nice for what they're trying to replicate. And even ignoring that distraction, I only ever really noticed the cinematography once. The Vast of Night really likes long takes, and yet most of them feature nothing but a very static image of a person talking. The opening one has this extensive sequence of the two leads conversing as they walk in heavy darkness down the street away from the camera, and the only thing I could think about was how easily it must have been to dub over this girl's monologue in post. Ordinarily, long takes are an opportunity for a film to show something impressive that required a lot of coordination, but the most impressive thing I can say about the long takes in Vast of Night is that it must have taken a long time for the actors to memorize all those lines. Providing, of course, you didn't have the script just off camera, which in most cases they could have done given the framing. It's ironic given I just talked so much about long takes, but there are some superbly bad editing choices here too. This is something I can't see anybody justifying because it's not characteristic of Vast of Night's influences, nor is it a symptom of having a low budget. Very basic, standard dialogue scenes of people talking are edited in a way that pulled me out of the film with how disorienting they are. While a bit more of an obtuse inspiration, The Vast of Night employs some very good stylistic traits reminiscent of radio plays, particularly the War of the Worlds reading by Orson Welles. And this explains much of the static takes of people talking for minutes at a time. Even based on location, there's a lot of scenes that take place in front of a switchboard or inside of a radio station. I don't know why Patterson wants to replicate a distinctly non-visual medium in a film, but it lends the movie a motif that doesn't feel superficial. I get the feeling most of the Vast of Night's detractors will probably begin and end their argument with criticism of the film's pacing. It is paced glacially, in part due to the static shot composition and dialogue-driven story, and while I don't really disagree with that argument, for me the slowness of the film came from my knowing exactly what to expect from it. I personally have an aversion to films where the logline can describe a film's plot front to back, all three acts. The Vast of Night's logline includes what are technically the basics of its plot. These two teenagers, they hear this weird signal and they try to figure out what it is. But the tactless approach to homage gives away the nature of what the signal is going to be. Somebody with even a cursory knowledge of the Twilight Zone could hazard a guess that the signal is of some extraterrestrial or paranormal origin. And that kills the pacing when the process of discovery in the film takes so long to catch up to what you'll already know if you go in with any knowledge of the basic plot. Even without that knowledge, it's not until about an hour into this 90-minute movie that the setup stops and things actually begin to happen. The attempts at building tension, which are admittedly pretty solid for the slow burn kind of story the movie's going for, are all in service of a mystery you already know the answer to. And no spoilers, but The Vast of Night has a very baseline and standard answer for everything it tries to put out there. The structure is all there, but with a slightness of substance. I don't think Patterson is untalented, because everything still comes across as though it was executed like he intended it. I just think he eclipsed many parts of the storytelling, character, pacing, editing, that I find essential in favor of being a slave to homage. I'll give Vast of Night a 5. A low 5.